My name is Khatchig Mouradian, and I'm a lecturer in Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies at Columbia University. My work focuses on the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire, and the legacies of genocide and mass violence. My interest in this topic comes from the fact that I'm a grandson of Armenian genocide survivors, and also from my own personal experience growing up during the Lebanese Civil War. And as I found my calling and pursued academia and became an educator and a professor, I was always struck by how we tell the stories in public discourse in schools and elsewhere of mass violence and genocide, and how even in academic circles, in scholarly books, the narratives about genocide often focused on the perpetrators. It was very much driven by the perpetrators. If we ask students, say, about the Holocaust or the Armenian Genocide or the Rwandan Genocide, the Cambodian Genocide, typically the narrative will be, this is what the perpetrators did, and this is what happened to the victims. And even the scholarly literature sort of perpetuates this narrative in many ways. And as a scholar who was working on the Armenian Genocide, the destruction of 1.5 million Armenians in the Ottoman Empire during World War I, I ventured into a project trying to document one of the darkest corners of this crime, which was the Syrian desert. It's a region, in fact, a triangle that is formed by the city of Aleppo, the region of Ras Al Ain, and Deir ez-Zor. And by focusing on this region, which is often considered to be the Auschwitz of the Armenian Genocide, I wanted to tell the story of what happened there. And this was supposed to be a story, a narrative, a historical record, an account of the massacres of hundreds of thousands of Armenians and the destruction of the Armenian deportees who had arrived in that region. But ultimately, something phenomenal happened in my research process. Even in that darkest corner of the Ottoman Empire, as the destruction of the Armenian nation was raging, I noticed how Armenians and others, local Muslims, Jews, Western missionaries and diplomats, created an underground network, and without firing a single bullet, organized and did whatever they could to help save as many Armenians as possible. So my book, which was supposed to be about this darkest corner and massacres and destruction, ended up being titled The Resistance Network, The Armenian Genocide and Humanitarianism in Ottoman Syria, 1915-1918. So it was a really enriching scholarly journey for me to sift through Ottoman, German, American, and primarily Armenian sources and reconstruct not just the destruction, but the stories that are not told, the stories of deportees and survivors coordinating efforts to save others, coordinating efforts to create secret orphanages, assisting with medication, and this network that extended from Aleppo all the way to the Syrian desert. While as it helped save thousands of lives, it also lost most of its members. And in many ways, what my work does is, on the one hand, it stands as a memorial to those who, again, engage in unarmed resistance. They risk their lives. They often got killed or arrested or exiled, but in order to save others who were in need. And ultimately, though, this process also made me think differently about education, and particularly about genocide education. Because oftentimes, again, as educators, as teachers, as professors, it's important for us not to just tell a story of victimhood, not to just tell a story of this is what the perpetrator did, and this is what the victims were subjected to, and this is what the bystanders did, and so on, right? It is as important to tell the story of how those who were targeted for destruction pushed back, resisted, sometimes with weapons, but most of the time with in ways that there's a spectrum of actions they engaged in, right? From hiding to saving to organizing, right? Figuring out ways of improving the lives of those who are in hiding, and so on. So ultimately, when we think about resistance, it's important for us to have this kind of sense, this broader lens through which we look at it. Actions that are taken to, risking one's life oftentimes against the will and the sanction of the authorities, to save lives, to assist people with their escape, to provide support, sustenance, are at the very core of the story of genocide. It's the other half of the story. And this is also a personal story for me, because it is thanks to that underground, unarmed resistance network that comprised Armenians, local Muslims, Jews, Western missionaries, and diplomats, that tens of thousands of Armenians survived the Armenian Genocide during World War I, and in the aftermath rebuilt, reconstituted Armenian communities throughout the Middle East, Europe, and here in the United States. I am the descendant of one of those families that benefited from this work, and therefore, in a way, my calling, my training, and my personal story converged during my research.